from what you've described, it seemed you were quite content growing up. Was there any time where maybe you were bullied, or just not even bullied, but looking back, you can think, okay, I can see maybe I wasn't doing so well then, or I can remember being emotionally drained by this or that? Like, is there anything in your life where looking back, you can see, okay, maybe that was an indication of me struggling with my mental health in a way, you know? And just your experience in opening up to people, like when you went through hard times growing up, who did you feel you could trust? Were there difficulties in opening up to family members about certain things, or opening up to your friends about certain things? And if you've gotten better over the years at opening up about certain things, what helped you to open up about them? So it's quite a lot of questions, but.
Okay, cool. That's good. Yeah. I guess one thing that really helped me when I hit rock bottom was when I was going through this ongoing battle with disease I was dealing with that I didn't know back. This was in my final year of my A levels, so essentially I had like this kind of gastric-based problem where I wasn't digesting food properly, and also I had constant bloatedness, gas, all these type of things, right? So there was an unknown cause. I didn't know what caused it, but it was an ongoing issue that lasted like 4 months, and it got to the point where I lost a lot of weight, and I had to like essentially do many scans and stuff. They didn't know what the problem was. They thought it was many different things. They thought it was TB. They thought it was appendix. They thought it was another thing. But the thing is, the root of it was still uncertain of. But it's the fact that I had something kind of growing. It was weird around my small intestinal area. So that essentially was causing a lot of issues with whatever was going on in my abs, or you can say my intestine. So during that period, I would say because it was my final year of A levels, I was quite drawn out. I was quite burnt out as well, because you're just concentrating on exams. You're concentrating on like your studies and stuff. But when you're dealing with this on top, it's like having the energy to keep going to school whilst dealing with it and not knowing what's going on. I guess was probably the time I felt genuinely quite drained from it all. And what helped me a lot was genuine support from my family, because they always made sure they kind of follow up on checks, seeing what's going on and stuff like that. And it got to the point where surgery was required, because apparently it swelled to the point where it was so bad, like they had to remove it. It was like an inflammation, basically, growing. So luckily, I wouldn't say luckily, I thank God that this is actually something that I was sent, because I've learned a lot about my body from this as well. I would like to say that after the surgery, I remember I had to have this bag in it, which was basically like a stoma bag. So they had to detach my intestine. I had like a bag, pouch. So essentially all my food I was eating was digesting, going into this bag. And that was my way of like getting rid of that waste. So basically, think of it like digestive stuff. It doesn't go through your intestine, nothing. So it's pretty mad how I had to deal with that. Because a lot of those type of things, those type of illnesses or surgeries, right? A lot of old people have it. They say from the spectrum, because what they said, I was diagnosed with Crohn's, right? So Crohn's disease is a type of anti-inflammatory, it's like a auto-inflammatory disorder type of thing. So any part of your intestine can just swell up for no apparent reason. They say there's many factors for it. It could be stress related, could be genetic, could be diet. There could be a lot of things. But dealing with that was like a really grueling, like quite a traumatizing experience, because it was not something I was accustomed to before. It was something I haven't heard anyone had it. It was quite unique in that aspect. It wasn't like I had not talked to in that aspect of relatability. It was genuinely something that I felt like I was going through alone. But because I had that sort of solid network of family around me, I felt like I kind of go through it. I was able to go through it. And I remember when I was in hospital for a while, even my friends from like school and that were just checking up on me, like, oh, I thought, what's going on? You're okay, you're coming into school and that, but damn, you're actually on hospital bed, like, what's going on? Like, you know what I mean? And then it's like, I genuinely didn't think it would have got that serious to the point I had to stay in hospital for a bit. Like, I thought it was something I could just, get some meds, sort it out, but, because you just think it's just something simple, like, I don't know, bloated, maybe a bit of food poisoning, something like that, but it just got it just kind of escalated. And these things easily brush off when you don't notice it. So it was pretty tough, but I guess I was quite rock bottom. I was quite down after that because I was still studying whilst having that, going through that. But the surgery came after my exams though. So I remember I managed to finish them, and that was great. But
that's good.
But the big hurdle was the fact that I had to do the surgery and then deal with life after surgery, right? So I had that bag for probably about 5 months before I did like a reversal surgery. I know it sounds all mad. You're probably thinking this is a bit, how do you but it's like generally that's just like, it's like hard to describe unless I show like an actual image. But I haven't found any good videos about it or good explainer videos about it. It's like very like doctor.
It's quite a niche problem.
Yeah, it's quite a niche problem. Let's say that. It's quite a niche problem. So how they describe it is very, very like technical. A lot of medical terms. Medical doctors will know these terms, but so just a general layman, they wouldn't really know these things. So I guess with something like that, I felt really, really like helpless at that point. I genuinely felt like, why am I going through this? Why I had to go through the pain was agonizing, all these things. But it was something that helped me because I did kind of see life a bit more differently. I wouldn't say I was a stressed out individual or who was ungrateful, but I kind of took things a lot more passively, a lot more slower. I'm not really the type to rush things nowadays, like understanding the process is very important, I'm not enough.
So do you feel like you're more encouraged now to take care of yourself?
Yeah, I'd say self-care is a big part of my life now, definitely.
Yeah, because you were saying that you weren't, even to this day, you're not entirely sure what caused it, right? And that's an interesting thing about our bodies is that, and you touched on this as well, like our physical bodies has a way of telling us like something's not right, even when we're not aware that something's not right. Our bodies have a biological way of telling us, and I think that's a very interesting point. Like, how do we take care of our bodies? Obviously, we could go off on a tangent and talk about even within the Black community, we hear about, I don't know. And a lot of this is very much dependent on a specific family's background and the sort of foods they eat and that sort of stuff. But, from media and sort of our favorite, I guess, Black American comedy shows or whatnot, we hear about the typical foods that Black families might eat, very hearty sort of food, rich in oil and things like that. And I don't know. I mean, I think there's various things. It's not an area that I'm an expert in, but within the Black community, I think there are various things we can do to take care of our bodies better and be more aware of carbohydrates and the sort of foods that we eat as well. And, so I don't know. I mean, but have you ever thought about what might have caused it, or you're still like, I have no idea?
To be honest with you, it could be genuinely stress related because with this Crohn's, I heard that is a trigger for, it can be any part of the mouth or the anus. Any part of those tracts could be affected. It can just swell up for whatever reason. But I remember I had like an episode where it was towards the end of second year uni. I had like a flare up towards my lips and my mouth and my throat. So all of this was quite like swollen. It was quite like really puffed up. So I looked like a puffish. It was like really swollen in this region here. And it was like, wow. That kind of confirmed that, this could be Crohn's, because when I told me initially, I kind of rejected it. I didn't really believe it because they wanted me to be on meds, which suppresses my immune system. So it essentially keeps me under control, but I'm weak. So I was like, I'm not trying to be on meds for my life. I thought, let me just go with it, see what happens in it. And then I realized a year or so, a year and a half later, this happened. So essentially, if it was triggered because I was literally burnt out throughout my second year of uni, it must be a link between stress. So I feel like for me, making sure I maintain my stress levels to a healthy level is like optimal key for me. So making sure I sleep good, eat good, rest good, look after myself. And that's essentially the backbone behind, or that's the key fundamental behind mental health. A lot of issues that we may be dealing with could be because of just lack of self-care, bro. A lot of it could be
literally,
a our situations could dictate a lot of situations could dictate how we could be assessed, how we could be, you know, of course you could be quite anxious, quite depressed and stuff, but a lot of it does get back to the very roots that essentially what you put in your body is very important, you know, and
True,
at least it can aid in building you as a person, building your physical health, mental, spiritual, all that stuff, you know. And that's like that's the important part. I feel like that's very important. Like for a lot of people that may be suffering, they should look after how they, you know, if they recognize things about the body that they tell them, you know, like it's weird to talk about just because it's kind of like a bit woo, but it's not really that bad, you know. There's certain things I feel like, oh, if I haven't rested well, let me just take a bit of a power nap, or have you eaten enough? Just have something quite light. They've always helped me. They always did me good. I mean, I can't be an expert in it, but it's just my own experience on how I deal with it.
Yeah. So what really so we do have that physical aspect of obviously eating well and drinking well, and thankfully I've been raised to, you know, eat all my vegetables. I guess I'm lucky because I've always liked eating anyway, so I just naturally eat everything I'm given, including my vegetables. So that does help. I'm not really a fussy eater, but you know, it's just been normalized in our family that we drink water, lots of water. So like I rarely ever drink juice, you know, rarely ever. I'm perfectly fine drinking water all day, every day. And that's helped. I think that's helped me, as well as, you know, my parents doing their education. Even during the coronavirus, I've been taking vitamin C tablets and zinc to keep our immune system up, and then, you know, going in the sunshine for a bit, getting some vitamin D. So, you know, all these different things that I think can help us, especially as black people, because for multiple reasons that I do not entirely know of, we are more likely to get the coronavirus. I think the vitamin D has some stuff to do with it. It's our skin doesn't absorb vitamin D that as easily. So it's good for us to take vitamin D sort of medication, or, like we've got like a vitamin D spray that we use in our mouth. So yeah, so it's like, you know, physical care is important. Getting enough sleep, like it's just the tradition in our house that everyone goes to bed at a certain time. 10 p.m. is a good time for all of us to go to sleep. We're encouraged to wake up early, not to oversleep either. And I think these good habits that I was raised on has helped me barely have any illnesses in my life, you know. So, you know, I agree with the physical aspect, but also stress is another thing as well. And obviously there's all sorts of factors that can influence any person's stress. It doesn't just have to do with their race or the culture or whatnot. It could be various other things. For me, it's very easy for me to be a workaholic. I'm very passionate about what I do. And so when I look back on any sort of mental health struggles that I've had, it's probably to do with obsessing too much over my work. And, even when I lie down in bed, my brain is constantly switched on, thinking about, how could I change this sentence in my essay? Or, I really, really, really hope I get a grade A. You know, I overthink it. And then it comes to the point where when I do achieve good results, the amount of hype that I've built in my brain has taken away from the gratification I get from a result. Like, even if I do achieve my target grade, I'm like, okay, but it's like I put in so much work and stress into it. And the amount of gratification I get at the end doesn't always match up. And, I don't know, what was kind of your experience growing up in terms of how passionate you are about your work? Kind of get us started on what got you into animation. And did you find that with your animation work that maybe at certain points your mental health was taking a toll because of how much you care about your craft and how hard your craft has been? You know, just kind of take us through that.
Okay, so I guess my animation journey started when I used to do like these stick animations back in high school. So I used to use Flash. It used to be called Macromedia Flash. So I used to use that program. Animate on the mouse was a myth. I can't believe it.
I remember them days.
I'm mad. I look back, I'm like, wow. time, I didn't even know that a tablet existed, you know. So
Me neither.
I used to literally just do what I did on the thing, like on the flash. It was me and my mate. We used to do it literally after school because parents used to come late, just picking us up. So it was that time. It was good to just mess about with stuff. Although we were not allowed to play games after school because they blocked all those sites. They didn't block Flash because it was considered an educational program. So people did just play games and stuff. Like it was old like Flash games, old Flash websites and stuff. Like you can make little banners, animations and stuff. But we always just use it just to make genuinely frame by frame animation. That's all we did. So what we were doing, and I was like literally an F5, F6 on the keyboard, individual frames, spacing them out. I didn't know subconsciously I was learning timing, spacing, all that type of stuff. I just did it because it just looked cool. Eventually that phase faded away up until year 9 because that's when I got to my GCSEs and stuff. So I focused more on that. So I kind of like dropped art in general because I used to draw a lot. I used to draw a lot of like anime characters. I used to watch a lot of anime growing up as well. So pretty much they were kind of like the main things about it. Although I never looked at anime like, oh, I want to do it one day. I just saw it as like a medium to escape into, right? Because that was the main thing back in the secondary school. I used to watch a lot. We had a small group that used to watch it because it wasn't mainstream that time, but now it is. So it was pretty good shit, you know. It's good that it is mainstream now because more people are exposed to it, but it was just that kind of like you said, it's like a niche. It was like really like a niche, like having that interest. So, and then I picked up art and animation, I guess, when I decided to when I went to an open day. This was back in year 12, and I looked at one of the courses at one of the unis, and I didn't know that animation was a subject you can pick. And I thought it was just genuinely, if you know people in the industry, you can get a job and that's it. You don't need to worry about anything else. I didn't know the procedure at all. And that's pretty much how it is now. It still is. Like, you know people and you just get the right, opportunities and you have a good portfolio, they'll hire you. You don't have to go uni. But I thought, let me just take the risk and go for it because this seems cool. I remember I used to do it when I was younger, so what's more to learn, really? Man, I was so wrong when I said that because I thought there was like, what else is there to learn? But there was so much to learn. There's a whole subject I've learned before. Yeah. And that was a huge learning curve because I had to take a gap year out because obviously, like I told you before, I had that bag. So I was still kind of like under the recovery process of my surgery. So when that all cleared up and everything and I was good, I'm actually grateful that it was about a few months before uni started. So I was all fit to go start uni fresh. That's good. So during that time, I was literally learning a bit about animation, going on DeviantArt, seeing artists, trying to upload stuff.
That's good.
What else? Just reading more about what they do. Like, it's just kind of keeping myself informed. And although it wasn't much, it was just something just before I go, right? And then I went into it and then pretty much figured out that this is really cool. I guess my first semester kind of solidified that this is what I want to do because I learned so much, right? And I realized with uni, the first year, you actually learn so much, and then the rest is just application.
True, that's true.
I guess from that point, it's just a deciding factor. And I can't lie to you.
And what was uni like for you in terms of managing the workload? And because you said earlier when you had that surgery, that was kind of a turning point for you in terms of how much you realized you had to take care of yourself. Do you think that had an influence on how you managed taking care of yourself during your university studies? Because obviously you moved away as well, right?
Yeah.
So you've got that sort of mental hurdle to deal with, like you're getting used to living with different people, you're in a different city, you're studying a subject that beforehand you barely knew anything about. So it's like, kind of take us through kind of your mental or emotional experience through that and kind of what you went through before with your health issue. Did that influence how you navigated your uni studies?
To be honest, it was kind of like I didn't overthink it too much because I wasn't really much of an overthinker going into it. I kind of went into it, and then as long as I just kind of just have the main things checked, like sleep right, eat right, like you said, you're rarely going to get ill if you look after your physical health. So that's what I did pretty much. And although I had that in mind, but I didn't think that would be something that would help me up until third year, because I had a support plan in place because apparently that condition I had, I was eligible to have support plan, which means I would have extension times on my deadlines. Basically, I didn't even use it the first 2 years. I thought, oh, let me just go with it. And because, like I told you before, I didn't acknowledge it as a disease until the end of second year, my flare up. So that's when it made me realize, wait, I need to actually like assess this. I need to actually can't overdo it. I need to actually make sure I have things in place just in case something happens, you know. So I can't compare myself to my peers who may be really good at what they do, because I have met some great animators as well, some great artists as well. So pretty much it's just the workload, I guess. To be honest with you, I wasn't always learning my craft as much. I felt like I was always trying to hit a deadline, especially with uni work. Like, I didn't have time to kind of like delve into explore stuff as much. I felt like all the work I was doing was towards the deadline or an assignment, which I guess that's good, because the motivation from there is like, if you don't do it, you're not going to progress the next year. If you don't get credits, or you got to retake or drop out. So you have that glooming, like, you know, pressure, right? So and sometimes you don't want to go into class for a few weeks, you know. Like sometimes when you have the weekly checkup with your lecturer, some weeks you're not feeling it. Like you haven't done enough for that week, because it becomes eventually a week to week thing, as opposed to like, the deadline for the next 3 months. Come back to us with what you got halfway through. We'll do the assessment, see what tweaks you need to do, then submit. But I think the way it was set was like, it was generally like hitting a hurdle week after week. So that was quite a toll, to be honest with you. But I guess it was the fact that I wouldn't say I lost the love for the craft. It's just I didn't dedicate enough time to actually learn the true fundamentals of it, you know. I didn't have that, to be honest with you. I felt like I was just hitting deadline, which kind of drew the fun out of it. But because of the project I've done, it was quite fruitful. I feel like I've learned more the historical aspect, the research aspect, because I did a documentary about my dad's migration experience for my thesis. So I can send you a link if you haven't seen it before. But
I saw it on your website.
So my website. Okay, cool.
And you know what? I can put the link to your website on the description for this podcast episode if you want.
Okay, good. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So by the time you guys are listening, you'll see the link in the description. So go and check out Hashim's work. And yeah, hopefully, I don't know who could be listening to this podcast. Obviously, the dream would be to find an opportunity through that. But yeah, so yeah, cool. So you did, we'll come to the migration film in a second. We'll talk more about, and I think you had some words on some animators, I think, that you looked at. I don't know.
Yeah. I do have a few inspirations and stuff. But
so yeah, we'll come to that in a bit.
Yeah, I felt like I was genuinely hitting deadline to deadline. It didn't allow me to really flesh out my ideas. I felt like I had a concept and then I had to work with that. Maybe because of the lack of time management, you know, with that, not having the chance to nurture my craft as much as I'd like to. But nevertheless, I felt like I always, you know, accomplish what I need to put my heart out to, or set my eyes on, basically. And yeah, that's pretty much it. But with uni, generally, it was something like I've learned that it was a good experience. Don't get me wrong. No, a lot of great people. Networking was pretty decent as well, and everything. And I think it's just genuinely the gratification that there's something. I feel like since uni, people take me way more serious, especially for my community and stuff. Like, he does animation. He's an artist. He's not gonna get. They can't really see me as like someone that can just do design whenever he can. He actually dedicated, you know, some time to it, you know. There's kind of like a level of prestige to it, which I don't really see it as it is, but it's just genuinely my peers and, you know, people that haven't on and stuff. Like, they really respect it. And it's like, although loads of people have it, it's still quite a good thing to have, because it's not easy. Loads of people drop out, loads of people are not for them. You know, uni's not an easy thing at all. And even though, you know, because I got a 2-2 at the end of it, but I was proud. Like, I didn't know I was going to bang it out, because it was literally that last semester that I had to grind up. That film was quite a changing experience, like, that film. Yeah. More about learning my dad's past history, but reviewing a lot of old photos and stuff, and then mashing it with animation. So I've learned more about my family history a bit more than that, I guess. So, yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing, because See, this is what I want to touch on, and this is where we get into the juicy part of our conversation, you know, the intersection between how we're using our art forms as a medium of self-discovery, right? And I feel like this is really important. So, yeah, take us through the making of your short film Migration, your graduation film, the backstory behind that, you know, and yeah, just what it did for you as not just an animator, but as a young descendant of an immigrant, you know, exploring your identity and exploring your father and his story. Like, what did that project do for you? Like, just take us through the story of it.
Yeah, so interesting thing is, I know with like graduate films, you have to like think about it for like a good amount of time. Like I remember
definitely
the second year, when we broke up the second year, they told us to think about our third year, you know, projects and stuff like that. And it was weird because this project wasn't something that was done for a whole year. It was generally the last 3 months, I believe, when I was.
Yeah.
It was generally like, it was quite short. It was a semester worth of a film. And I know Derby does it like, I know they do it for that reason because they want you to have a variety of work so that you look well more like rounded, or you're well more versatile in the, you know, in the employment world. So with this film particularly, the main inspiration was the fact that I managed to travel with my family to Egypt that summer in 2018. Wow. So yeah, it was quite a historical place because my dad, the last time he set foot in that land was back in 1994 when he left, 1993, 94, because he studied there essentially for a good amount of time, and he kind of found himself a bit whilst learning that, going through that experience, you know. And pretty much me actually visiting that country, took loads of photographs, learned a lot about the country, like genuinely not what I thought. You know, I can understand people may have their concerns of what's happened with the revolution back in 2011. You know, it was quite an uneasy time there, you know, especially with the Arab Spring and everything like that. So, but genuinely seeing that history, I don't see much Arab influence at all. Like, genuinely, they're really proud Africans. Like, the way they portray stuff is weird because although they speak Arabic predominantly, which is the main language, but genuinely, that's probably the only attachment they have with the Arab world. But other than that, they have a lot of rich African culture and a lot of the way they communicate, how they are. Genuinely, it's like, as you know, apps, you know, like the way they're really mingling and a lot of things about it. It's just really, it's quite inspiring actually. And people so satisfied with less, and it's quite weird. It's a really weird diversity. Seeing kids proud to hold around 20, equivalent of like 20p here, they're just happy as hell. Like, they're so happy. But then you see people living in like certain villas and mansions and stuff. It's like way more better than like maybe top ends here in England. It's like you see both high and low parts, and they all integrate. Like they don't. There's no clear division. Like literally, rich and poor are just they're so interconnected. And it's like that was something that kind of took me away because I never thought that would integrate in that way. And so the people, they're quite connected. They're quite, you know, strong people. And with that, I really thought hard about, okay, maybe something like this I could utilize a film. And then after consulting my pops, I was thinking, you know what? Why not make a film about this, but have you narrate your experience whilst you're in this land, right? And use whatever materials at my disposal to make the film. And I think the bar was really high for me because this is something that would be like my debut film or debut story. So there's already, the bar was quite high. It wasn't something that was kind of for me. This was kind of for my family in a way. So it felt like I was doing kind of doing them diligence. I had to kind of make sure paying homage in that way. So, and I know my dad as well, he has quite a reputation in the community as well here, especially in the masajid he's in, the mosque. So he's quite well known in the community and stuff. So essentially, he's been a long-time Arabic teacher for the longest, helping out with obviously voluntary Islamic schools and stuff. So his connection with all these things, these skills he picked up, would make him a perfect story to actually him talk about how he was. Because a lot of people would like to know about his past. Because as he is as a person, very welcome person, probably will have. You can have a conversation with anyone. That's the funniest thing about the podcast. He's very, very he's in quite a conversation. He's really cool. And I feel
I think that's very powerful. I think that's very powerful in terms of how often do we get those moments to connect with our parents, you know, who, you know, migrated to this country, and how often do we just sit down with them, because we're so used to them telling us what to do and disciplining us. But when do we get the chance to just sit down with them and connect with their own humanity? And like, you know, like even during lockdown, I don't know what the lockdown experience has been for you in terms of connecting with your family. But for me, you know, here and there, I've sat with my dad in the garden, and yeah, he talked a bit about his growing up in Ghana and, what it was like coming to this country, you know, working, doing different jobs here and there. And yeah, it's nice to have those moments, because I feel like those are valuable moments of us knowing ourselves in a sense, you know. I think a huge reason, when I look at the broader spectrum of all the various issues that young ethnic minority people are experiencing, a lot of it is to do with identity and like this sense of where can I really call home, you know? So, and I know that was a quite, that was quite a big topic that you looked at in like through the title Migration, MY. This isn't, when we look at migration in the media, there's this monolith narrative that's told about why people migrate and the sort of people who migrate. But the MY, you know, obviously signifies this is a personal narrative, and everyone has their own story. All the people coming from various countries, various cultures to Britain, looking for different reasons and looking for different opportunities, that we're not just one monolith. We've all got various reasons. I'm afraid that is the end of this part of this interview. Stay tuned for the next part of the interview in the next episode. Thanks for listening. Peace.